Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Women at Ardent's webinar on shaping your voice today and how to get your message across at work. I'm Meredith Maynard. I'm the Director of Quality at Oklahoma's Utica Park Clinic, and I'm honored to serve on the steering committee for Women at Ardent. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone of our purpose for Women at Ardent, and that is to elevate women within our organization by providing opportunities and resources and increasing visibility while developing leadership skills that further enhance the network of women at Ardent. For our Connect to Purpose on each webinar, we recognize individuals in our organization who are exceptional leaders, mentors, and a good example of purpose for caring for people. And I'm very honored today to highlight one of the medical assistants here with us at Utica Park Clinic. So Dr. Gaffney, who has Dot Hudson as her medical assistant, sent us a story about a recent experience in her clinic. And so I'm just going to read to you what Dr. Gaffney shared with us. I wanted to brag on my medical assistant, who is the hardest working, kindest, and most compassionate person in the world. One of our patients was seen in the clinic who hadn't been seen in quite some time, and the patient had a lot of physical, financial, and emotional challenges. At the end of the day, the patient's lab came back just before we were about to close, and she had abnormal liver functions, which Dot had already discussed with me regarding her jaundice appearance. She had high blood sugar, and the patient had no insulin at home. So it was a very precarious situation. So even though the clinic day was wrapping up, Dorothy drove after hours to the patient's house with the long-acting insulin samples. And because the patient relies on Sooner Care, which requires the patient to have a 3-day notice for transportation, and she had no money to have alternate transportation, Dot continued to make arrangements for the patient to have transportation to the pharmacy that evening to get her short-acting insulin and also to her ultrasound the very next morning. She is the ultimate example of what everyone should strive to be. So thank you, Dr. Gaffney, for sharing this experience. Dot's example of self-sacrifice and compassion are a reminder of the characteristics that exemplify true leadership. So thank you, Dot, and thank you, Dr. Gaffney. So now we're going to move on to our topic today, and we are honored to have 2 of our very own employees as our speakers for today's sessions. They're going to give you an extended introduction of themselves during their presentation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mary LaFrancois, Vice President of Human Resources, and Julie Cromeens, Vice President of Marketing from Ardent's UT Health East Texas Division. Mary and Julie?
Great. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Meredith, for inviting Julie and I to be part of Women at Ardent. We're very honored to be here today. Again, I am Mary LaFrancois. I have the privilege to be the HR leader here at UT Health East Texas. Julie and I wanted to have more of a campfire session with you guys, but unfortunately with COVID, we're going to go with the fireplace side. just a little fun for the day. A little more about me. I have always worked in the HR space. That's where my career has been. I've worked in a few different industries, and in the last 15 years or so have had the privilege to work in healthcare. Worked on several different teams and had the opportunity to learn several tips. So I'm excited to share them with you today. Now I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I am Julie Cromeens, the Vice President here at UT Health East Texas for Marketing. I'm excited to be here. I've had the opportunity to work across several different industries, beginning with newspapers, very different than they are today. Then I went into higher education, and now I'm in my first executive role in healthcare. So excited to share some of the things I've learned across my experiences, because we need everyone's voice in the room. So let's get right to it. There are a ton of studies out there, and there's one from George Washington University found that men interrupted 33% more when they spoke with women than other men. That's at about a ratio of about 2 to 1 when they spoke with women versus 1.8 times over the course of a 3-minute conversation when they spoke with other men. In contrast, the study found that women on average only interrupted men just once. Now, we're not here today to bash men or to divide us. Today's about awareness. It's about awareness of what both men and women can do to better listen to each other, how we can build each other up and lift everybody in the room, how women can own our behavior and better advocate for ourselves. In fact, our wonderful coworkers, our Division Vice President and CEO, Moody Chisholm, Donald Baker, our COO and CFO, and Dr. Tom Cromeens, our CMO here at UT Health East Texas, helped us film some videos that we're going to roll here in a few minutes. And they were fun to do. But we only had to arm wrestle one of them, so it was a win, right, Mary?
Oh my gosh, for sure, for sure. They're great people to work with, and I'm excited to be able to share that video later on. So what have we learned so far? There's a whole bunch of interrupting going on. Sounds like it anyways. Let's find out what you're about. We're going to have some fun. We want you guys to participate with us today. So this is a village, not just Julie and I. So if you can either pull out your phone or at your desktop, if you can go to www.menti.com, and there's a code, and it is up on the screen, but if you don't have the screen, it's 650056. And we want you to answer just one question. This isn't a long survey. Are you an interrupter? Do you get interrupted? So are you the interruptee? Or a little of both? How we want you to answer that is really how you most often are in that style. So again, just go to www.menti.com, code 650056, and let us know if you're an interrupter, an interruptee, or a little bit of both. We'll share the results in a little bit, but in the meantime, I'd like to talk about how our message can better get across at work. There are lots of things out there that we can do to do a little bit better on making sure our voice is heard as women in meetings and at work. What I did was I came up with the top 5 that I'd like to share with you today. So we're going to start out with number 1. Put yourself on the agenda. What a way to ensure that you're going to have an opportunity to speak at the meeting, to provide your ideas, to provide your thoughts, to provide your knowledge to the meeting attendees. It's a great way to do that. Sometimes when we're not on the agenda, we may end up not participating like we should because we do great work here and we have a lot to contribute. However, don't be obnoxious and just be on the agenda to be on the agenda. Make sure it's appropriate, but do be conscious of whether or not you should be. Number 2, make an entrance. And what I mean is let's not come into the room on fire, right? We don't need to be, running into the room on fire. But what I mean by that is walk into a room with confidence. Having to make sure that your body language shows that you know what you're doing. Look around the room, see who's in the room. If there happens to be anybody in the room that you don't know, make sure that you go up and introduce yourself. I know with COVID, it gets a little more difficult, but we can always elbow bump or, air high five as we're introducing ourselves. And I'll tell you why that's so important is that as people are conversing in meetings, they're not going to pull you into a conversation if they don't know who you are or what your role is or, how you can contribute. So it really is a great benefit to you if you do know and connect with everybody in the room. I know it gets a little harder in today's world with that WebEx. So you might want to even do it that way. So if you get on a little early and you see somebody you need to introduce yourself to, or private message them, because we do have the chat where you can private message somebody. So a couple of opportunities there to make sure you are interacting with all of the participants. Number 3, speak with confidence. Don't devalue your language. And what I mean by that is don't say, I'm sorry, or that's a hey, I have a stupid idea, those kind of things. We don't want to devalue what we're trying to say. As we were preparing this week, gave me an opportunity to think about my own language. And I have to say, I kind of think I'm the president of the I'm Sorry Club. I found that I am saying that a little too much. In fact, it was interesting. Somebody said back to me one day, they said, "Why are you sorry?" And I had to stop totally in my tracks and be like, I'm not really sure why I said that. It's such a habit for me that I'm really going to work hard on making sure that that's not part of my language, unless, of course, again, it is appropriate to say that. But there are some things that we can do different. So, for example, let's say that I show up late to something. And instead of saying, "I'm sorry that I'm late," maybe we say, "Thank you for waiting for me. I've made an error on something or something not quite right." Instead of saying, "I'm sorry," maybe I approach it more like, "Hey, thank you for catching that for me. I really appreciate you." Those different responses really make a difference in how our language is coming across. Number 4, balance speaking and listening. One of my favorites. We all know that person in the room that spends a lot of time talking and nobody else can get a word in. We definitely don't want to be that person. We also know that person who attends our meetings that they don't contribute at all. We also don't want to be that. So talking about balancing between speaking and listening, we want to make sure that we balance that well. So when you're in meetings, just think about, are you contributing at the level is appropriate, and are you listening at the level that's appropriate? So if you're one of those people that maybe spends a little more time talking, you might want to pause more often and think about, bringing in some other people into that conversation. Number 5, and the final number, support and lift up women that are in the room. If someone is interrupted and you notice that, and I encourage you to figure out, how do I help each other in bringing that person back into the conversation? So let me give you, an example of that. If a person gets interrupted, especially a woman, because you heard Julie say that at the beginning, that the number of women getting interrupted is much higher. So if you do see that, maybe you take a moment when it's your opportunity to speak and bring the conversation back to the person that was interrupted and bringing them in by saying things like, "Hey," and I'll use Julie as my example, is, "Hey, Julie, I'd love for your idea to be expanded a little more. Can we go back to that?" That could be a great way to do that. If you are the person that's interrupted, sometimes that can be uncomfortable. And what I'd encourage you to do, number 1, first thing I'd do is say, ask the person very politely to let you finish. If that doesn't work, you may want to say, "If you don't mind, I have a few more points I'd like to get across." And if that doesn't work, let them go, but once they pause, then go back to, "Hey, I'd like to finish my thoughts on that," so that it's awareness to them that they have interrupted you and that you have additional information that you wanted to provide. So to recap, the 5 top things: put yourself on the agenda, make an entrance, speak with confidence, balance between speaking and listening, and support and lift each other up in meetings. So now I'm going to pass it back to Julie.
That was great, Mary. Lots of great information. Let's take a quick look at our poll before we go into the next piece and see who told us they were an interrupter, an interruptee, or maybe a little bit of both. It looks like we've got 19 people that identify with being more of an interrupter. Thank you for being honest. A little bit higher, 22 is mostly interruptees, so about half and half there. And the majority of people feel a little bit of both. So 85 people, identify with being a little bit of both. And honestly, I definitely identify with being both. I've noticed just in preparing for this, it really depends on the situation I'm in. How about you, Mary? What do you identify with?
I would actually say I'm a pretty both kind of person. I probably lean towards being interruptee versus being the interrupter. But there's probably a few people on this call that may think differently. Let's hope. Please don't put that in the chat. Don't call me out on that. Anyways, thank you guys for participating. We appreciate that. You know, one size doesn't fit all. We all have very different personalities, different styles. We're different, you know, positions in our careers. We have different things that we have in our backgrounds. And what I will say is that, you know, even Julie has longer legs than me. Anyways, I digress a little bit. We all are very different. Julie, tell me your thoughts on the top 5.
Sure. Well, I think you gave us great things that we can all do. However, I do lean a little more towards the introverted tendencies than you do, Mary. And so I have some additional suggestions for some of you out there. But first, I wanted to share this statistic I found when we were trying to put together our thoughts for this. And there was a study that asked, when you feel like, or when you have a contribution to make in a meeting, how often do you feel like you can do it? Only 35% of the respondents said they feel like they can make their contribution every time. And the most overlooked segments were remote workers, introverts, and women. So I thought that was pretty interesting and some food for thought when you're in your next meeting. But on to the top 5. So a few extra tips for some of you more introverted folks out there. Number 1, like Mary said, put yourself on the agenda. Yes, introverts, that's especially important for you as well. Many tend to shy away from public speaking, but the more you practice, the more you become comfortable. So put yourself on the agenda when it makes sense. A strategy for making that a little easier on yourself is try to get towards the top of the agenda. We can become overwhelmed or drained by large or loud meetings. So see if you can get yourself towards the top of the agenda while your energy is still high. 2, make an entrance. Like Mary shared, walk in the room with confidence, positive body language, make eye contact, all very important things. Introverts, another thing you can do is you'll often default to the edge of the meeting or to the outer parts of the room. It's important for you to choose a seat at the table that puts you in the middle of the conversation. And then also, you should master the pre-meeting. Get there early, push yourself to go outside your comfort zone, introduce yourself to new people. These side conversations are important, and they're also good practice for larger networking opportunities. Number 3 is speaking with confidence. And like Mary said, this is extremely important for everybody. Use positive, confident language. I have to practice. Honestly, I look at my agendas ahead of time, so I have quiet time to put my thoughts down. I make notes not only on my own presentation, but I look at the entire agenda for a meeting and put notes and or questions I might have, so I'm not trying to think of them on the fly during a meeting, because it's easier for me to kind of clearly think in my own quiet time ahead. So that's a good strategy. And then also, you know, if someone sends a meeting invite and it doesn't have a clear topic, I've been able to call them directly and just ask, you know, what is this about? What are some of the goals you want to accomplish? That way I can be prepared and prepare ahead of time. I can be prepared. We can have an effective meeting. And it's good. It's a better use of everyone's time. So let's see. And then number 4 was balance between speaking and listening. Now, folks that tend to be a little more introverted, we have the opposite problem. We can often be too quiet. So have the courage to kind of put yourself on the agenda if you have something, but have a plan if you don't, to get your voice out in the room while the meeting is getting set. Usually the meeting vibe is set early, and if you can speak up earlier, your energy is higher again. So that's a good thing. Your voice is out there, and other people throughout the meeting may refer back to your comments, which gives you another strategy for being heard. And finally, support and lift others up. This is incredibly important and something we can all do. Have the courage to stand up, and if someone made a great point that is left unacknowledged, give them the credit. speak up on their behalf, or if someone was interrupted, find a way to whip the conversation back around to them so they can continue their thought or finish it. But working on this together and being aware is really important for all of us. And speaking of giving credit, my friend Mary here has taken up piano lessons during the pandemic. We talked about it the other day. I tried to get her to do her first recital here, make her debut, but sadly, she's declined. So but I'll let you know when the tickets go on sale. Mary?
Oh my, there is no piano recital coming anytime soon. Me and the 8-year-olds, right? Anyways, we so appreciate you guys participating in our survey earlier. We're going to ask for your help again. What else would you add? You heard the top 5 in different styles. More of the way I lean, and then the more of the way Julie leans, because her style's a little different than mine. What else would you add to the top 5 list? Is there something that you would really recommend for this group to think about in improving or looking at or being aware of to continue to get our voice heard while we're at work? So again, it's www.mentee.com. Enter the code 650056. So please jump in there and add the items you'd like to see. As we said earlier, we created a video as an example of some of the things we talked about today, some of the things we talked about in our top 5. So in the first section of the video, you're going to see an example that's not so great of being interrupted and not handled the way that we've been talking about today. The second section we have set up so that you can see it handled more in an appropriate way that we're encouraging you to do. Feel free, if you want, to put comments into the chat, but they have to be kind comments. So remember, this was fun. This was something, we do take this serious, but it is fun. So let's roll the video. Meredith, we can't hear it.
Yeah, let's see if we can get some audio. There we go.
Overall, an excellent month in a variety of sectors, including achieving financial targets and good surgical volumes. However, I am concerned about a couple of items, particularly ER volume. It's declining.
Yeah, it's a great point, Donald. I'm concerned about it too. We're going to have to dig into the details, and all of our leaders are going to have to evaluate this and come up with some mitigating strategies.
This may be a silly idea, but what if we publish our wait times? We could do it on billboards or websites.
Moody, really the issue is throughput in the ER. If we spend our time and energy on that, I think we'll have the problem fixed.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom.
Great meeting.
Oh my gosh, can you believe that? Tom just totally interrupted Julie. Didn't even get her a chance to finish her thought process and her ideas. And then Moody, are you serious, Moody? You give all the credit to Tom? Oh my gosh. All right. So, can we do this better? Let's watch.
Overall, an excellent month in a variety of sectors, including achieving financial targets and good surgical volumes. However, I am concerned about a couple of items, particularly ER volume. It's declining.
Yeah, it's a great point, Donald. I'm concerned about it too. I really need all of our leaders to evaluate the data and come up with some mitigating strategies.
Well, I know that if we publish our ER wait times, people will be more likely to come.
Moody, really, I think the issue is throughput in the ER and getting backed up and people waiting too long, so they just go somewhere else. I think if we would spend our time working on throughput, pulling people through the system.
Oh, that's a great point, Tom, but let's get back for a minute. I want to hear you break down a little bit more what you were bringing up there.
Sure. I know if we publish our wait times on our websites and our billboards, that people will feel more comfortable. Oh my gosh, wasn't that great? What a great way to show you the right way to do it. Yes, Tom still interrupted Julie, but Julie had the confidence when she was giving her idea. And Moody just whipped it right back to Julie to say, hey, Julie, we need to finish your idea. That is how we support each other and lift each other up.
Okay. We'll talk about the video in a second. Let's review what you guys would like to add to the top 5 list. Look at this. Stop doubting that your contributions are worthwhile. Know your subject and use your voice to state your knowledge. Be prepared, do research. I love this one. Remember to breathe. So true, so true. I had to think about that today, right? Be an active participant. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification if you don't understand. Reach out to the meeting owner and add the items like that. Be prepared to succeed. Love that. Love it. Gain mentors, becoming one. Let's see, do research and prep for your comments before the meeting. That's an interesting one, yeah. Socializing issues in advance of a meeting, one-on-one with team members. I've done that. That's a great success. Be concise. That's so important. We talked a lot about the kind of language we use. Make sure we use positive, confident language so that we're very concise on what we're going through. Role play or practice with trusted teammates. These are great ideas, and thank you for participating with us. We love the fact that we have such a great audience to help us through this. So let's get back to the video. Let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, it didn't seem to flow well, but that's all right. The message hopefully was there. Hopefully you noticed that we are really taking this serious, that people do get interrupted. And it was so appropriate how Moody really brought Julie back into the conversation, and that's what I was talking about earlier. How do we make sure we kind of help each other out in meetings? Because not everybody is aware that they are interrupters. And so how do we bring people back into the conversation, make sure their ideas are shared, making sure their thoughts and their knowledge is at the table so that we can do that. So hopefully you enjoyed it. It was fun making it. I do want to thank again Moody and Donald and Dr. Cromeens for being good partners with us. We love working with them. They didn't hesitate, and it was kind of funny because we hadn't really told Dr. Cromeens he was going to be the interrupter. So when he read the screen, he's like, wait, how come I have to be the bad guy? So he did a great job. So just want to thank you for letting me be here today, and I'm going to pass it over to Julie.
Thanks, Mary. Just a quick reminder that the chat box is open, and we, before I say some closing comments, would love to hear from you. If you have some questions or comments that you want to share with us that we can answer questions, that'd be great. So go ahead and go to the chat box. And also, Ardent is looking for, if you have multiple people gathered in a room, let them know your group size. They're trying to figure out how many people have joined us today, and that's great too. So go ahead and please be active in that chat box. But yes, this was a lot of fun. We had a great time putting the video together, and thank you for that. And want to thank all of you for being here, as well as the Women at Ardent team who's helped organize, and our AV folks today, and they're helping with that. And again, thanks to Moody and Donald and Tom. And I just want to say I'm really proud to be part of an organization that has Women at Ardent, something like this and then so we can continue our growth, as well as the diversity and inclusion committees, which Mary and Moody lead at this division. So I think, really what all this together means is, when we really leverage all of our different personalities, our different genders, et cetera, we bring everyone's ideas to the table, let everyone be heard, And ultimately, our company is much stronger and we have better results. So thanks again for letting us be here today.
Thank you, Mary and Julie. That was just fantastic. I love the top 5 list, and I love the video, seeing some familiar faces there, and just a fun reminder of what this looks like in real life. So if you haven't had a chance, go ahead and submit your questions through the chat feature, and I'll go ahead and bring up some of the questions that have been asked so far. Julie and Mary, I heard you guys make a quick mention just about now that we're working remotely and with WebEx. So there's a couple questions related to that regarding suggestions when we're on WebEx. How do you make an entrance when you're working remote? And also, can you recommend a tool to keep from interrupting people on a WebEx meeting while still getting your point across? I think we've all fell into that where everyone's either trying to talk or you feel like you can't get a word in edgewise. So some suggestions on how to be heard in a remote setting or WebEx feature.
I guess we'll flip a coin on who is going to answer this one.
Maybe we'll just go back and forth.
Well, you know, I would repeat, one of the best tools I find if I want to interact with somebody without interrupting the meeting is through the chat, where you can privately send a message to that specific person. What a great way to have that connection with somebody that way. I think, you know, in regards to making sure you use tools like raise your hand, sometimes the WebEx or the system has an opportunity to do that, and you want to make sure that's another way to be polite, but also get an opportunity. Julie, do you have any ideas?
Sure. So making an entrance on a WebEx is agreed, very difficult, but I still think it's a positive thing if you can be there on time or a minute or two early and connect with people ahead of time so we can get the meeting started on time and be efficient there. It's still an opportunity to talk and have some of those conversations. How are you doing? Where are you? How's the weather where you are? You know, all sorts of things you can talk about to kind of break the ice and move forward. And then who hasn't, over the last, 6, 7, 8 months, had those awkward WebEx calls where everyone's trying to talk, or you know, you're talking over each other. So all the things that Mary just shared, and then additionally, I try to even slow down, which I tend to talk quickly anyway. I have to breathe and slow down anyway, but try to slow down even more on a WebEx a little bit. Pause. Everyone's worried about that awkward pause between people talking, but on a WebEx, it's important. Sometimes I've noticed the feed is a little bit off for some people versus others. And so just trying to give it a couple of seconds before the next person picks up is also a helpful tip.
That's great tip. Okay, so this next question is a little more tricky, so I guess I'll let you guys both decide who wants to answer this. So what could you do if the person that is interrupting you is also your boss or your supervisor? So how do you make your voice be heard in that situation?
I think I'll start and send it to Mary this time for some additional. But to me, no matter who's interrupting you, the way you redirect it needs to be respectful, right? This is a workplace, and so it shouldn't matter that it's your boss versus somebody else. You should still be able to speak up and use some of the techniques we've shared today to kind of make that known. Now, if it's a constant thing, maybe it's a one-on-one conversation versus redirecting it back in front of everybody in the meeting, So that's one thing you might do differently if it's your supervisor or your boss. But again, I mean, no matter who is interrupting it, we need to be respectful, and hopefully this makes them a little more aware, and it makes us all aware of some techniques that we can do that to correct some of that, or just make people more aware. Mary, do you have anything specific to a boss?
Yeah, I would probably add, it could be more uncomfortable to do that, right? However, we don't want to miss the opportunity to share our ideas or our thoughts. So maybe in that situation, it's the best time to do it is when they pause then it's your opportunity to say, I have a few more ideas that I'd like to put on the table, or I have a few more thoughts on that topic. So making sure that as soon as they pause that you are back into that conversation is very important. That's what I would add. I think that does make it a little harder, but not impossible. I'm with Julie. We still need to do it.
Great. So kind of transitioning here a little bit, someone brought up the topic of saying sorry. I think women have been pointed out before of often doing this. So how can we gently support each other in not saying sorry so much?
Well, I'm going to leave this to the president of the I'm Sorry Club. So Mary, it's you.
Well, absolutely. One thing is just, on a private note, is reminding people that they say it. I actually have a team member who I think is part of my club. She has a tendency of saying it too, and it's a habit. It's not even intentional. It's kind of built in us, and it's a habit for us. So it's really helping us remind awareness that we're saying it. So if a person says it and we're private, then I would say it right away. If we are not private, I would say it once we have some opportunity to be alone. But again, then practice figuring out, how do I respond to that without saying I am sorry, such as, thank you for, thank you for catching that for me. I so appreciate you helping me out, versus I am sorry that happened. If you think of several responses that you do, how you can change the sentence versus saying I'm sorry. And I would say it's all around practice, and it's all around helping each other be conscious of the fact that we do it. One of the things I was commenting about last night was I had taped a conversation one day, and then I had it transcribed. And the best way to do that is see it in writing of what you say. And there are words that I have a tendency of using a lot, and that's a great way to help you start figuring out where do you have an opportunity to change that language that you use.
Thanks. Those are great answers, and I agree. Seeing your written word definitely brings light to some of the words that you favor or that may not be appropriately confident. So this is another great question. So do you have any tips for women or people who are trying to make their voice heard, but the people in the room just seem disinterested, or they're not engaged in what you're saying, or maybe they don't even want to be there at all? So how do you re-engage their interest into the points that you're trying to make?
So we can't win everything, right? So there are times I would definitely recommend that you got to pick your battle. And there are times that you got to decide if it's really worth continuing to work on getting your voice heard, or is that the conversation or the topic that is not, to go to the hill on, is definitely the first thought. You want to make sure that it's really worth that effort to put it through. I would say the second thing is continue to, when the pauses happen, when the opportunities happen, that you speak up and you don't wait for somebody else to speak up. You actually, are really listening and paying attention so that you can get in when that pause happens to make sure your voice or your idea, your thoughts can be used. Julie?
I agree, and don't let it sway your confidence. It just may be a timing thing on some level. So just continue to tell your story. If this is something that you're really interested in and you think it would really help the organization, continue to tell your story and be patient. And maybe the one-on-one conversations before the meeting, like Mary suggested before, could be helpful to help get your story out there and help others be more engaged in it versus a large meeting setting too. So.
Perfect. So just lots of great questions coming in. Julie, this one is directed actually to you to answer. So, Julie, do you feel that your experience working in the media helped prepare you as an introvert to be in a corporate executive role?
I do, and oddly enough, I chose the media because it forced me. I studied in journalism, and I chose that as a study back in college. I really liked the way it made me feel to push myself outside my comfort zone and every day go have to talk to new people and tell stories. So I do feel like it's helped me in my career overall. Used to be, and still am on some levels, very shy and not as outgoing. And so that has helped me, and I've used that throughout my career to continue to advance myself and push myself. So.
All right. Well, questions are starting to kind of slow down a little bit, but I have one more question. So in regards to meeting invites with an unclear purpose, what is your guidance on meetings that really may not even be needed at all? And can we feel okay about speaking up and questioning the need for a meeting? So I know you addressed that a little bit, but having the confidence to say, hey, can this be an email instead of a meeting, or just clarifying the agenda maybe?
Sure. And honestly, when I've gotten those invites, I'm the one that brought that up as far as, I want to know ahead of time what I'm walking into so I can be prepared and we can be effective, right? And so when I've had to have those conversations and call people and say, hey, okay, I've got your invite. What exactly is this about? I want to be prepared. Sometimes those meetings end up being canceled because we can talk over the phone and things like that, or we need more time when they're pushed out a little bit further because you have to collect data ahead of time. So I think that really also helps when you don't know exactly what a meeting's about to call and kind of with some of those things about unneeded meetings, because otherwise we would all get in a room and then we would talk about what we needed to do, and then you would have to have another meeting. But oftentimes if you can just talk ahead of time and figure out what's needed and come prepared for the first meeting, that kind of eliminates some of those unneeded meetings. So.
Perfect. Mary, any closing thoughts on that?
Well, I wasn't born to social distance, so I love meetings. I think we should have meetings, but I am teasing. I think, everything should add value to our business and our decisions making. So we should question, and we should be very conscious of why we're putting the time into something and making sure it really adds value to the organization. So all joking aside, I do think we need to do that, even though I do like people. So
it's been a struggle for the extroverts these last few months, I think. Well, thank you, Mary and Julie. Just excellent topic and excellent tips for us to take away with, and I really appreciate you sharing today. And so if you had questions that maybe didn't get addressed today, we'll try to get those answered either in the chat or through our LinkedIn or our website for answers to those outstanding questions. As always, you can go to the website. There's some really great resources on there as additional readings, podcasts, books, and things to dive into the topic even more. And then if you had any colleagues or coworkers that weren't able to attend, you can direct them to the website and they can watch this recording and also other previous recordings as well. So our next webinar is going to be the topic of handling difficult conversations. So I think that's a great segue from this topic into that. That's going to be for Friday, November 20th, and we'll be sending out more details closer to that date. So again, if you'd like to stay connected, updated, there's lots of ways to do that through the website, through the text feature. Also, you can send your questions directly to the email if you have suggestions for future topics. And then also share on all of your social media, #ArdentWomen, to share takeaways from today or thoughts moving forward. So thank you all for attending today and have a fantastic weekend.